We're talking about effective prayer. Make your prayer more effective. A man said to me he was swindled of $15,000. He said, how can I get it back? The man dropped dead. The man was penniless. The man who dropped dead was penniless. Here's a simple law of mind. You cannot gain or lose except through the mind. All transactions take place in the mind. If I admit I have lost it, I have. But a man who knows the laws of mind, he says, I am mentally and spiritually identified with that $15,000, and it comes back to me in divine order. Then it will come back in some other way. A relative of his passed on a month later and bequeathed to him $20,000. You see, when you say it comes back to me in divine order, your subconscious mind always magnifies whatever you deposit in it. Never admit a loss. Rawson, the famous English scientist, had a student who was a very wonderful psychic. She had a dream one night. She saw an airplane on fire. There were two men in it. They were burned to a crisp. She knew the time. She knew the location. She asked a neighbor to accompany her to the particular area, and they both decided to pray scientifically. In other words, it doesn't have to happen. Nothing is foreordained. Nothing is predestined. They both pray this way. This plane which I saw is God's idea. It's moving from point to point, freely, joyously, and lovingly. It's surrounded by the sacred circle of God's eternal love. The whole armor of God surrounds the plane and those in the plane. It is God in action. They remained quietly contemplating these truths for 15 minutes or so. The plane came overhead just as they saw it, just as she saw it in her dream. It was on fire. The two men in it, when they reached the ground, when the plane reached the ground, were not touched. Not a hair of their head was singed. This is the power of prayer. She did not succeed 100%, but she succeeded 95%. She did not prevent the plane from catching on fire, but she protected the lives of the two men. Now, the woman whom she asked to accompany her, her brother was on that plane. Both men said they knew they were immortal when the plane was on fire. There are certain states of mind where fire does not burn and poisons do not kill. It's true that fire burns, but at higher levels of consciousness, fire does not burn. I have seen people walking on red-hot coals of fire, 1,500 degrees centigrade, in Ceylon, India, and many other parts of the world. They believe they're possessed by gods. They are conditioned over a long period of time, and they believe they're possessed by their gods. The soldier in Vietnam phoned his mother, telling her that the doctor said his foot would have to be amputated. She said, wait until the morning. Said, in the meantime, I will pray about it. His mother was a very spiritual woman. This is called absent prayer. There is no absence in the one present. There is no time or space in the mind principle. His mother prayed this way. She said, my son in Saigon is known in divine mind. The surgeons are God's men, and God is guiding them to do the right thing. The healing presence of the living God flows through my boy, vitalizing, healing, restoring, transforming his whole being. His body is God's body. His life is God's life. And the infinite healing presence, which made him from a cell, is now making him whole and perfect. And the healing love of God saturates his whole being. And God in the midst of it is healing him now. She went over this quietly in her mind. You use no effort in prayer. Prayer is effortless effort. You cannot add power to omnipotence. Prayer is like painting a beautiful scene on the wings of a butterfly. She knew it's impossible for her prayer to fail. That is the meaning of be careful about nothing. It does not mean negligence or carelessness. The Bible, I know the sun will rise in the morning, the stars will come to the sky. That it's impossible for my prayer to fail. When you have divine indifference, your prayer will not fail. Because you know the sun will rise in the sky. This is why the Bible says, the prayer of faith shall save the sick. The Lord shall raise him up. The doctor came in the morning to see this boy. The gangrenous foot was perfectly normal. His mother's prayer. The subjective of you is timeless and spaceless. An officer who was in the Vietnam Army told me at a banquet that he was leading a platoon in Vietnam. And the boy said, "Stop, stop." Soldiers with him heard that. It's an inner voice, inner silent noise. He commanded the platoon to stop. Then the voice they found a mine. They would his sister, and she was always praying for her brother. She wrote back. He told her in the letter, "I heard your voice 3 times," and he told her what happened. And she wrote back and told her, "I prayed for you at 9 in the morning, but at Mass every morning. My prayer was this is the prayer of He said, "I have to examine the car." He said, "I heard my mother's voice, and she